In English for Academic Purposes, or EAP, the foundation of modern curriculum design is a process called needs analysis. The stated objective of this process is to map a student's current language proficiency and learning background against the target requirements of their specific academic discipline. However, there is a pervasive misconception within the EAP literature. Practitioners frequently treat this analysis as an impartial, precise educational technology, a simple matter of measuring gaps and filling them. Framing course design as a purely objective mapping exercise obscures the ideological biases inherent in the university system itself. When educators treat syllabus creation as a neutral science, they risk conflating the actual needs of the learner with the rigid demands of the institution. By prioritizing objective mapping above all else, designers create a path toward institutional conformity, where success is measured by how well a student adheres to preset requirements. To avoid this trap, modern EAP practitioners must move beyond merely descriptive accounts of what a target academic situation requires. This requires adopting an alternative approach known as critical EAP. The core intervention within this critical approach is the integration of rights analysis. Rights analysis provides a conceptual framework that views the academic classroom as an active site of power, control, and struggle. Under this framework, the student's role changes. They are empowered to interrogate exactly who sets their learning goals, why those goals were formulated, and whose interests they actually serve. To build truly effective courses, educators must provide students with the structural tools to negotiate and challenge their academic environment, rather than merely conform to it. To understand why rights analysis is necessary, we first have to break down the mechanics of the traditional needs analysis. At its core, the standard model seeks to answer the how and what of a course syllabus by collecting two distinct sets of data. Looking at this framework, the first major component is the present situation analysis. This looks at where students currently are. It assesses factors like their existing literacy levels, their prior learning experiences, and what they already know about the subject. The second major component is the target situation analysis. This identifies the specific future demands placed on the learner, the linguistic skills they will need, the academic roles they will occupy, and the specific genres of writing they must produce for their discipline. Gathering these two sets of data produces a detailed map of the gap between a student's current proficiency and the university's expectations. The systemic limitation here is that this matrix is entirely descriptive, lacking any analytical depth regarding the power structures enforcing those expectations. This model tracks exactly what is expected of the student, but it omits asking why it is expected or what happens if the student objects to the workload. Applied linguistics theorists argue that this omission is a severe ideological flaw. They point to the concept of spurious neutrality, the false assumption that mapping student needs is a process free of political or institutional bias. By treating needs as objective, measurable facts, EAP departments are often forced into a subservient service role, uncritically accommodating the demands of other university faculties. One of the primary mechanisms of this institutional control is the sheer volume of material the university demands the student memorize. Coverage equals control. The psychological effect on the learner is total absorption. Being overwhelmed by nonstop lectures and rote memorization prevents them from having the time or energy to question the larger social issues of their education. Without a critical intervention, needs analysis builds a highly efficient cage, upholding an unequal university status quo under the guise of academic preparation. To see how rights analysis practically operates in a classroom, we can look at this 1999 case study conducted by researcher Sarah Benish. Benish observed an EAP writing course that was paired with a dense, high-speed psychology lecture containing 45 students. The psychology lecturer functioned essentially as a delivery mechanism for unilateral bureaucratic power, racing through a massive amount of material. A traditional EAP approach to this scenario would be to teach immigrant students to sit silently, listen attentively, and take rapid lecture notes just to survive the semester. Instead, Benish deployed a rights analysis intervention. She encouraged her students to treat the psychology lecture as an open negotiation. Her specific tactic was to have the EAP students sit in the front rows and actively ask questions, frequently interrupting the professor. The strategic intent behind this questioning was to intentionally slow down the pace of information delivery. This intervention had a direct systemic effect on the classroom dynamics. It reclaimed instructional time and discourse for the learners, forcing the curriculum to accommodate their presence. The results of this study suggest that provided with the right conceptual tools, students are capable of identifying institutional constraints and acting to change their own learning conditions. For modern EAP instructors and curriculum designers, this yields a clear pedagogical takeaway. Effective course design requires a dual-focus approach. The first half of this focus is needs analysis. This side remains necessary to accurately map the institutional reality and establish baseline target requirements of the discipline. The second half of the focus is rights analysis. This side reveals the possibilities for structural change, student resistance, and democratic engagement within the classroom. Integrating both frameworks gives students the agency to consciously choose which aspects of a course they will accept and which they will challenge. EAP theorists present a final ethical imperative regarding the withholding of these critical frameworks. If educators do not make students aware of these choices, they are actively choosing compliance on the student's behalf. True academic instruction must initiate students into the required discourse of the academy, while simultaneously handing them tools to critique and dismantle its underlying assumptions.